Hey, view request.
Smooth like butter. Turn the volume down. And there we are. Hi, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm setting this up on my so I've got this hi
Hola.
on the above the bench, and then I'll watch it on my personal Instagram on the iPad, so that way if somebody's like saying something or whatever, I know.
Cool.
That way
Well,
I can see what's happening.
I see a tier
How
of
are you?
bonds. I'm good.
Oh, that's so cool. So
No.
I feel like I've met them, but and I meant to post about this. It's we met at 11 today, right?
Correct.
I hustled my butt out the door to catch the ferry this morning. Excuse me, one little bite. Raced to the ferry, and then had met with you, met with somebody else, and I looked up and it was 4 o'clock.
Yeah, that happened.
I'm so confused.
Welcome to time.
Yeah. How did that happen? I'm gonna grab something real quick.
Cool. Hello, everyone watching.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to Live Crafting.
Live crafting with Mary and Matthew. We're making stuff.
Yes, we
Grabbing
are.
Okay. Look at us. Okay, and what are you working on today?
Well, I've started a new habit called crocheting, and I've pretty much, I think, done it every day at this point in the month of November, which I'm very happy to report that I've come up with some really interesting, weird, sort of like abstract objects, which I'm happy to show and do a show and tell at some point. But for the moment, what I'm working on is what's turning out to be a scarf, as it turns out.
Okay.
In the land of crochet, I've been developing my texture skills at the moment, where I'm learning how to do more than just a basic stitch. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's what I'm working. What are you working on today?
Oh, cool. And Teresa was the person that she just commented, love that you're crocheting live with black and dark yarn. She was the person that I did a live craft, I think last week. And she was the one making chickens, which was cool.
Nice.
So that's awesome. That's very cool. It's a whole different world.
What?
Just crocheting. Like I've never done it.
Really?
Yeah. You'd think. I also
Great.
don't know how to knit.
Well, neither do I, to be fair. I've decided that I'm sticking to form, though. Like, I'm not breaking up with crocheting.
That's well,
And
yeah.
I'm not cross-contaminated. I'm going to stick solely to crocheting. I know that, like, knitting has potential to do lots of amazing things.
Sure.
And I feel like I want to get really good at, like, one form of, I guess, what they call fabric art. Is that how they refer to it?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. Fiber arts is
Fiber.
Yep. I mean, when I was in school, the department was fibers in art school. My nerdy art school days. Yeah, there's a Instagram person account that I just started following. I found them last night. I love that my weird little algorithms are working for me in such a way that I am discovering all these really wacky and weird, really awesome artists on Instagram. And this account that I found last night was, she had crocheted a beard and then gave a tutorial for how to do so. And it was freaking awesome. It was really, really cool. And I was, and if I knew how to crochet, I actually probably would think that the tutorial looked doable as well. But, and I'm sure it is something that, you know, could be learned, but anyways.
Yeah, it's an art form that it's nice to have somebody who knows what they're doing nearby, because there's been moments where I'm like, why is my scarf getting skinnier? Or why is it? And it turns out, you know, it's easy. And I think that's like a common mistake that people make around skipping a stitch, you know.
Sure.
So, but I feel like I've gotten better since doing it every day for the last month.
Yeah, I think that, I just think that, like anything, having somebody who's been there and done that, kind of looking over your shoulder and being there to answer questions is so amazingly helpful and valuable.
Oh, yeah.
So that's all I was going to say.
So wait, what are you, let's hear about your creations.
I know. So this, I might regroup. Well, no, I'm going to work on this for a little bit and then I'll pivot. So this is for a client, and this is a necklace with these pieces of agate that that were found on the beach. And these actually were pieces that were found by my dad in Oregon, which is pretty rad. And I've already used this rough material. I made a solar system necklace last year, about a year and a half ago. This really cool, awesome, big solar system necklace with gemstones for all of the planets. And this is what I used for Neptune, because it has the, Neptune's the one with the eye, right? The red spot. Is that Neptune?
I don't know. It's been so long.
Teresa says it's canon that your first square project will turn out triangular. That's so perfect. I love that. Anyways, I'm building frames for these. So I'm fabricating out of wire frames for these that they will get set into. And then the Fibonacci spiral will be placed on the frame as well, over on the top of the frame. And the two pieces, when the Fibonacci's spiral is flipped, kind of loosely form a heart shape, which is very sweet. And then the two pendants will hang together. So it's kind of a heart, but with nature. So that was the inspiration behind this, this piece. And then also at some point, I think I'm going to pivot to working on my tree branch that I started with Sunday's Live Craft. And I might even be doing them in tandem, which is my little inclusive flag colors, gemstone, tree branch pin. I think I've decided it's a pin. I was waffling back and forth, pin over pendant, pin slash pendant, and I even put some Instagram polls up, and the answers were split down the middle, 50-50. and which I think is hilarious. It's like, you guys are no help.
Like either or is.
I know. I love it. Well, most of the time when I do those fun little Instagram like design polls, it's like 75% or 90%. And this one, it was like pretty much exactly 50-50. Like, well, at least I know I'm on the right track. I mean, you know, I'm not way off. So, anyways, that's So what got you inspired to start crocheting and working with your hands and doing stuff with your hands?
You know, it's so funny because I actually have no idea. Like I was reflecting on that the other day. It's like, why did I start crocheting? And I just got, I guess, what do they call it? Like a wild hair.
Yep.
Is that what they were? And I don't even know how yarn showed up into my day that day. I don't know how I ended up with my first crochet hook. Like it's a little bit of a mystery, but all of a sudden, like, I don't know how many days it's been so far. What day is this? Day 27 or 28 in August? November. And here I am. Yeah. Like 28 days in, just like crocheting like a beast. And I mean, I don't even know how many hours I've put in, but it's been every day. And then what happened is I was in Seattle the other day in Capitol Hill, and I went to a bookstore and I found this book on crocheting. And it was like all the, like the, you know, step-by-step guide to crochet. And so I decided, oh, you know what? Well, here, I'll give you another little truth bomb here. But I bought the book and I decided, okay, I'm going to make a commitment and like work my way through the book. And so meanwhile, I have this client who is a choreographer, and her and we barter, and every other week she talks to me about my creativity and all of my projects and stuff. And she made she made the observation the other day that she was like, Matthew, you realize every time you show up, you've started a new project. Like, what are you doing? Why don't you just focus on one thing? And so when she said that, I was like, okay, girl, you just called me out. So when she said that, I was like, okay, heard. And so I decided that the one thing was going to be crocheting. And so I made the commitment, and here I am doing the thing. So, but I think what I like about it is it's something to do with my hands, which is very, it is definitely a skill set, right? So it's like there's a technique involved. You know, it's something that with practice, I think you can learn to really get good at it. And there is about like being able to make functional things like scarves and hats and stuff. But what I'm actually enjoying, I don't know if you can see any of this, is like I started creating these like really weird like crochet objects that to me feel more like kind of like abstract painting, right?
Okay.
But in like three-dimensional form. And so then I started experimenting with, okay, like how do you wrap the yarn around itself? How do you connect it to different parts? And like what little crevices can you create that that you can like put little things inside of? And so they just turned into these sort of like three-dimensional landscapes. And yeah, it's been sort of like an exploration in making landscapes since I started, which is, I think, different. So it's different, and that's why I like it. It's not something I'm used to.
Well, I think it's different for you, but I think it's also, I mean, I don't know much about, but it seems to me that it's also very different. Just like, even my first thought, which was a really interesting thought, is for me to be like, well, what could that be? Like, what could that be turned into? And then it's like, no, Mary, that's not turning into anything. That's just, it is what it is. And it's existing as art, which I think is a super interesting conversation about art versus craft, or art and craft. And is craft because it's useful? I mean, I've been pondering this one since my art school days. So 30 years ago, I was bugging my professors about this kind of thing. It's like, why is there art in America and there's craft in America, or American craft magazines, and why do I like the stuff in the craft magazines more than I like the stuff in the Art in America magazines? But I'm at art school, not craft school. So, you know, and my professors have this idea of art, you know, what that's supposed to look like. So I think that's super interesting. I'm very fascinated by making crochet that is not for anything. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, and
color.
Yeah. Like I mean, I love this question, this inquiry of like, what's the, because like I've always learned about those two things together. It's like arts and crafts, not arts or crafts, arts and crafts. And so in my mind, it's sort of that experiment of what lies in the space between the two of them, right? Like for me, as an artist and as a person, I love abstract art. I love art that isn't necessarily explicitly literal and makes you think. It makes you have to ask questions about things and puts you into a space of like inquiry and thought provocation. And so what I really appreciate about more abstract artwork, when it's well, I think well intended, or thoughtful, is that it does sit in that space between. It's not like it's completely void of function. Like the function of art is to make you think and wonder and ask questions and tell stories. And so there's something very magnificent and about that. So I don't know. I just it's interesting.
That's really cool. I like that. Yeah, it's been really interesting kind of discussing or having this discussion just in general. It's come up a few times of, you know, how we view ourselves and how we value our time. Because I think actually it was Teresa that I was talking to about how she was talking about pricing and how that was a challenge for her when she's showing at craft fairs. And, you know, she showed this teddy bear, and it was like, I know that took a very long time to make, and hours and skill. And so I was like, okay, well, what are we talking about here? What do we think we're scared to ask for pricing wise? And it was like, $40. And it was like, wow, but I can also see in the world of mass produced stuffed animals and everything like that, there is a, if Jeffrey Koons made it, how much would it be? But, if Jeffrey Koons made a crocheted stuffed animal or, stuffed bear or whatever. So I just think it's an interesting thing to think about, an interesting topic of discussion is then the value, because I think that tends to be a dividing line between art with the capital A and craft is this perception of value. And then you fit in jewelry, which has intrinsic value, but most of the money that you pay for, especially in more unique jewelry, is actually labor. It's not actually, but it has intrinsically valuable materials. So those, and people expect it to be expensive, but yeah. So it's just, there's.
Well, okay. I want to ask you a question that's like,
yeah, I love it.
Semi, not, but now you've got me thinking. Like, why did you choose jewelry, goldsmithing, and all this stuff? Like, where did that come
from? So I went to school. I went to art school. I went to school at Kansas City Art Institute. And my and I got a degree in painting. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in painting. And the art school, it's a very small school. It was at the time about 690 students, and it had ceramics, sculpture, fiber arts, painting, and design. And I'm sure there's another major that I'm ignoring, and somebody's going to be mad at me, but whatever. And the school itself was really good at really working us as artists and finding meaning and getting techniques down and developing our style or our point of view or our vision. They did nothing to prepare us for the actual world of, okay, now what are we going to do? And I kind of remember thinking like, well, I now have a waitressing degree basically, because that's how I put myself through school. Um, and the art world at the time was very heady. In fact, it was a lot of Fibonacci spiral. In fact, I got in trouble once for skipping a lecture to this. All the class was supposed to go to this one artist talk at the local museum or whatever, and I actually went to a different artist talk. But the artist talk that I missed was an artist who based all their work on the golden mean. And and everything, it was just like, it was almost like a math discussion or something. Everything she did was all about math and proportions and how that was meaningful. And that was just not my thing. I was more into the abstract figurative type of work. And so anyways, my uncle, who owned a jewelry store up in Woodinville at the time, called me about a month before I graduated and said, hey, would you like an apprenticeship to work at my store to be a jeweler? And I do remember at the time, because giving, I gave it some pause. I really thought about it, because I had this kind of feeling that if I chose, it was like a red pill, blue pill situation or something. Like I really had a knowledge that if I chose making jewelry, I probably would not continue to pursue painting. Like I could see that it was a career. But I didn't love the painting world, and I didn't love all the BS that you had to do, and it was very male-centric, male-dominated field at the time. So anyways, I chose to apprentice for my uncle, and that was 29 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And the irony is that I never thought, I took every jewelry class, I took every art class. Art was my haven. The art room at the high school, well, middle school too, was my safe haven. It was my place that I could go. So I took every jewelry class they offered, and then I did independent study, and my art teacher, Cecil Feroy, hooked me up with a local jeweler and got me, like, I worked after school for this local jeweler, Pat Lown, and but it never occurred to me that that's what I would end up doing. I don't know why, but yeah. Anyway, but I really liked it, and I loved working for in a small custom jewelry store. My uncle's store is a very small custom shop, and then it's just kind of I always really liked it. For a little while, I had a studio both in Pioneer Square, and I was working for my uncle part-time, but then eventually I just realized that I wasn't really going to the studio. I was just doing jewelry more, so I just kind of decided to focus on that.
Wow.
And I think someday,
That's a cool.
now that Rose is, out of the house, I might paint again. And but
Well, I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Like, do you, having been somebody who is multifaceted, at least in terms of your background and skill set in art, right? Do you feel like how does your background in, say, painting inform the work that you do as a jeweler?
Yeah, I definitely think that my art school time was not misspent, and I definitely feel like it was valuable, even though I'm not a practicing artist in that regard. But definitely, I don't know. I don't know that there's anything super direct where I can, because I don't necessarily consider what I make. I consider it artistic, and I definitely get my creativity needs met making jewelry, but I wouldn't say it's the same, especially because since I'm so custom design oriented,
Mm.
um, I will say that I don't, it's all about using the client as a muse and kind of collaborating with the client. But there's also one of the things that you gain in art school is a discipline of design, a discipline of learning a lot about different styles. And so knowing a lot of art history, and so understanding a lot of like cultural meaning behind things, and being open to exploring different designs and different design styles and that kind of thing, I think definitely is applicable.
Mm. That's cool.
Yeah. So I think, I wonder is there any, I wonder if there's some kind of correlation with dance and other, you know, other things. I would imagine that there must be.
Oh, sure. I mean, so I was mentioning earlier how I have that client I work with. That's well, she's a choreographer, right? And
Uh-huh.
her and I, we share a background in dance, right? So our create, and we've danced together, we've performed together, we've created together, and so I know her and she knows me as in that art form, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, and so here she is now speaking to me about my work as a crocheter, if that's how you
Yeah.
label a person, right? In this space, and how we talk about it is really interesting, because like today we immediately go to like the movement of the experience of doing the thing. We talk about like the tactile nature of the material. We
Totally.
talk about the texture and the way that it flows. We talk about how the object exists in space, and how we relate to the shape of the thing in orientation to how it exists in the space, and what it could mean for us as something that could be worn, or you know like being in response to it. Like, is it a costume? Is it something that we dance with, dance around? And in fact, and so it's not, it's I think the dance part, well, and even the composition of it, right? We talk about like one of the things I've said to somebody today, in a meeting I had when I was talking about like the crochet work was, when you think about dance, right? What
Mhm.
what sort of often dictates the length of a dance piece? It's often the music, right? So if you have
Oh,
a
right.
3 minutes long, then the length of your piece more or less can sometimes be 3 minutes long. So in the
Yeah.
context of crocheting, what the analogy that we use is like, oh, the spool of yarn that exists here, that's your score. That's your musical
Oh,
score.
yeah. Okay.
You have the length of the score to complete the work, right? Now you
Yeah.
can break the rule, right? And any good choreographer, not limit themselves to the 3 minutes if it needs an intro, if it needs a different song or whatever. But
Yeah.
thinking about composition of the work relative to like these restrictions of,
Yeah.
what's the yarn for, or then you think about like when I bring two pieces together, right? So this piece here, actually two spools of yarn, one is white and one is this sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
blue color,
Yeah.
and the way that they move together, it's a duet, right? It's like it goes around and through
Yeah.
and under, over and about. And so I think whether it's explicit or not, the concept of dance composition is what's informing the experience of creating the work. At least that's how it occurs for me.
I love that. You're so much more articulate Yeah, like you really, that's very articulate.
Oh, why thank
And I mean, and, and it totally makes sense because yeah, if you think about it, you've got your yarn, but I mean, nobody goes to dance and watches a 3-minute dance. They watch an entire dance evening,
Mm,
and those dances are probably usually not completely independent of each other.
mm,
Just like if you're going to a gallery show by an artist, all of the paintings aren't copies of each other, but they probably all have something in, not just that they're made by the artist, but they probably have some theme, something in common, something that ties them all together. The cohesiveness, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, that you hear talked about all the time too. So I can totally see the correlation where that really wouldn't have occurred to me 10 minutes ago. I love that.
Well,
This is why
yay.
conversations with artists is so cool.
Yeah.
I think, and the other thing that I was thinking about, while you were saying that is, you know, sometimes I hesitate to necessarily call myself a jewelry artist just because of what we just talked about, because I'm so customer oriented, and I do have a lot of pieces in my showcase. And I think I've always struggled a little bit with, the fact that if you look in my showcase, I don't know that you would know that the same designer made every single piece that's in my showcase,
Mm,
because I'm very inspired by the gem, or maybe I'm just inspired by like upcycling something, and I'm just inspired by the shape of something, and I just think it's really cool looking.
mm,
And I'm not just sticking to necessarily to one style.
mm,
Um, and I don't know if that always serves me. Like if I'm looking to get into a gallery like Twist or something like that, I don't always know that that serves me, but it also is how I like to work.
mm,
Like I like to, like I'm making a supernatural looking, organic-y, nature-y, branch inspired piece, which I'm totally in love with.
mm,
And then, you know, tomorrow I might be making something that's like uber modern and super chic and minimalist, right?
mm-hmm.
And I don't see the disparity personally. Like I see it. It's not that I'm immune, but I don't. It's all coming from me, so I'm feel like I'm okay. But I could see how it could be seem disparate. So then I feel like, but by having an entire case of things that I made in a store of my creation and in a walls that I painted and with my paintings on my walls and stuff like that, I feel like at some point it will tell a whole entire story, even if it doesn't necessarily seem like everything matches or goes together. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess I mean, it is tricky when you kind of like bring the client wait or a client piece into the equation, right? Because really you're in service of what they want, right? Like this is
mm-hmm.
not you, it's about them, and you know, leveraging your talent to bring them something. So obviously your like voice is imprinted in the work
Mm-hmm.
clearly, but it's not supposed to be the representation of your express. I guess I
Yeah.
don't think it's supposed to be your expression. It's supposed to be something that speaks to who they are and what's important to them. And
Yeah.
so I guess it's sort of, for me, like it brings up that question of, you know, which is sort of the one of those like age old questions. It's like, at what point, like what's the line between, so we talk about the line between art and craft, and
Mm-hmm.
then you introduce finances or money into the equation, then how does
Mm-hmm.
that alter the relationship to the making of the thing? And you know, um,
Yeah, and I mean, even part of that question too is does it limit it? I mean, I have to think about saleability. I have to think about wearability, durability, and saleability
mm,
because the
mm,
materials are so expensive. Whereas if I was making jewelry, say, in copper or silver or something like that, I could definitely have more freedom. But there is something about the longevity and long lastingness of gold jewelry and fine jewelry with kind of fine gemstones that I
mm,
find super appealing. I really appreciate jewelry artists that work in silver and copper and mixed materials like that. And I think it's really awesome. I just, for some reason, that's never been as appealing to me to create with, which would be nice if it did. And I thought more about that. Like, okay, it's not like how can I make my pieces less expensive, but it's more about like, am I limiting myself?
Mm.
And then the other thing too is that I've always worked for places. I've always worked for other people. So this has been really interesting. At 29 years into my career and at 52 years old, I'm now, you know, as of 2 years ago, I now get to go, wait a second, I can decide what's in my showcases. I can decide what I'm making and showing and putting out there to the world.
Mm.
And I can decide. So this tree branch, this doesn't have to be the only tree branch that I make. And so I have decided that I'm going to make multiple tree branches, and the next one will be more like a curly willow. So it'll have some twists in the metal and it might have different gems. I don't know yet. I haven't figured that out yet. But I may do a little series because I'm really, really enjoying this tree branchy concept. And I don't have to have this one be the only one. It's never going to be a carbon copy anyway. So, and I would imagine that that can play into discussions also similarly about crafters that make practical items, you know, where do we just make 20 of the thing, or is each one different?
Well, yeah. And you can't make 20 of the same thing, like if you're really making it by hand, because there's, you know, the subtle nuances. I mean, one of the fun things about this craft right now is, you know, as much as I want to get it right, you know, and especially when, like, so my boyfriend had a birthday this last week.
Aww.
And so I decided to make him a scarf for his birthday, and literally it was the first scarf I ever made, right? Like, period. And so it was fun. He kind of referred to it as like, you know, when you make pancakes, like there's the first pancake is always a mess, right? So it was my first pancake scarf, and it was a mess. Like the bottom of it was wider than the other end of it, or the beginning of it was wider than the other end of it. Like at one point I totally lost track of how many stitches I was doing, and then it gets skinny in the middle and then wider, and then I ran out and didn't know what to do, and so then it got funky, you know. And the cool thing is it's like there's never going to be another scarf like, even if it was a pattern. It was a pattern,
right,
of a double stitch, you know, so many wide, and granted, even if I didn't make those same mistakes, right, there's still going to be different, first and foremost, because there's you know, a limited number of them that are made by hand. And you know, and I don't know, I think we're, you know, we're in this like really interesting phase too with, you know, with artificial intelligence and like how that's impacting, you know, the writing industry and the relationship to communication, and even with the visuals and stuff. It's just like, I actually feel like we're going to be in a, or if not, maybe in some ways we already are headed in that direction. We're going into a place of like, the handcrafted good is going to be the preference.
yeah,
Because of this, like the same stuff over the McDonald's version of everything is not desired, you know?
yeah.
So
I think so too, and I think it's interesting how worried I mean, yes, like I can here's the, you know, there could be the two truths at the same time, right? There can be the valid concerns over creativity, but on the other hand, just as with the lab created diamonds, which I know we were talking about earlier today, when we were talking about marketing and stuff, but like the lab created diamonds, everybody in the jewelry industry was super freaked out about that. And then of course, you know, you've got all these other concerns ethically and environmentally and everything. But what's really interesting is that 3 years ago, 4 years ago, they were selling for maybe, I don't know, like 70% of what a earth mine diamond would cost, and now they're selling for like 10% of what an earth mine diamond would cost. And they're predicting now that in 2-3 years they will be so worthless that the companies that are making them will give up and dry up, and then but in the meantime it's not negatively impacting earth mine diamonds like everybody so predicted that it would. And it's not exactly the same comparison, but it is kind of an indication of we do prefer things, I think, and experiences now too, as our economy gets a little weirder. I do think people are starting to value experiences and handmade things so much more often, so much over the commercially available, which I kind of wonder at potentially end stage capitalism, if there's historical precedent for something like that, if this kind of return to the earth, return to craft, return to making. I love this. So Teresa says the funky, wonky, slightly off items actually have the most charm because they are unique, in my humble opinion. I mean, that's the whole thing. If you can make it perfect like a machine can make it, then why? Yeah, why? That's when you start comparing against mass manufactured, is when, if the two are the same and the handmade item, so then, if it doesn't have artistry, so then it needs to have artistry. It's not just that it's made, but it also has to have a person attached to it.
Yeah.
And also, before I forget to say this, how lucky is your boyfriend that he gets to have your first ever made scarf? Like, that's a big deal.
I know, right? I think it's amazing. That sucker, or at least to wear it proudly all the time.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. That was fun.
I have a few of my first pieces of jewelry, and they're pretty awful. I mean, they were made in high school with equipment that was, half the students were using the scale to sell drugs, and like abusing the equipment, and things weren't exactly like nice and stuff like that. And I had no idea what I was doing. So they're not amazing, but I do still have them, and I kind of treasure them as my humble beginnings. I should dig those out and post them. One was a mountain ring, that was a mountain range kind of from the side, and then it had these holes that I thought looked cool, and then I would fill them with different colored paints when I had them, they glowed in the dark for a little while, and then I had different colored paint, and I made a really ugly skull because everybody in high school jewelry class makes a skull at some point.
What?
I don't know. It's a thing. No.
What was the weirdest that you remember? The weirdest thing that you remember making as a kid, like in art class?
Oh wow!
That you were proud of. Like something that you were like, okay, I made that. It was weird, but I'm proud of it.
Well, okay, this is not necessarily one that I can totally remember making, but for years and years. Oh, actually, no, that's not true. Okay, I have two. Can I answer two? I want two.
Yeah, go for it.
So the first one is this, what is that, salt clay? So it's just flour and salt, right?
Okay.
And it was probably made when I was like 1 or 2. And and it was just a ball, and my parents called it the rock, and it broke just a couple of years ago. It finally disintegrated. But every year they would put it on the tree, on the one branch that was sticking up too high to weigh the branch down. And I mean, it was just the ugliest, dumbest, awfulest looking thing, but then it becomes like the traditional, where's the rock on the tree? Find the rock. But I made in 7th grade in my middle school, art class, we had a ceramics session, ceramics ceramics unit, and I made a nativity for my parents because they collect nativities from all over the world, all different kinds, out of clay. And I did roller printed texture for the clothes of all of the different, characters, I guess, from the nativity. And Mary looks like she's been steamrolled because I don't know. Because I was in 7th grade, and I made an entire nativity, like I made the sheep and the wise men and the angels and the I don't know if I had an ox or anything, but I mean, it was a lot. And for years I was both proud and embarrassed when it was put out, because my parents would make fun of Mary, not in a mean way, but in a jokey way. But I was pretty proud of it. But also it was, I should pull that out and take a picture of it. They gave it to me a couple of years ago. I think they were just downsizing, and they were like, this is yours. And they gave it back to me, which was it's a little weird, but, I was like, I'm not gonna try and read anything into this, but okay. They also gave me back my framed school yearbook pictures,
Okay.
So like an 8x10 or a 4x6 picture of me when I was in, 3rd grade. I'm like, what do I do with this? And they weren't moving either.
They're just getting rid of stuff. That's what it was.
I know. But I'm like, am I going to hang this on the wall? That's kind of weird, right?
The next generation wants that,
I don't think my daughter wants that either. But I can't bring myself to throw it away because it feels weird to throw away your own framed picture of yourself. I don't know. It was a very weird experience. So we will see. We will see. Even jewelers melt things. I just melted a bezel. So I'm gonna go
well, guess what? So I went from, I think I have, let's see, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So I went from 21 stitches across at the start of this. Somehow I'm down to 16. So somewhere along the lines, I lost track, I missed a stitch, and now I'm regain myself by adding stitches inconspicuously.
That's been an interesting thing with the live crafting. Like, the reason I was going to be working on the Fibonacci piece, but that I've pivoted back to the branch piece, is because I realized that I needed to focus. In order to do the Fibonacci, I actually probably couldn't talk and work at the same time. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not what we're doing. So it is kind of been interesting. Like, okay, what can I work on that I can almost go into auto mode a little bit? So yeah. But I can imagine like counting stitches could be really difficult if you're trying to talk at the same time.
Oh, I don't count. That's, I think, part of my problem. I'm like, I count them out. I'm like, wait a second. Why is this whiter than this part? I'm like, oh, because I wasn't counting. Okay, got it. Check.
And then have you heard? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Teresa's taught me the term frogging when you're making or crocheting or sewing or whatever. It's the ripping out the stitches. Have you heard that term?
I have not heard that term.
So it's called frogging because it's rip it, I guess. I mean, that's not, it's literally like, I didn't set you up for a joke, but I thought that was hilarious.
That is cute. That's a cute little phrase. I like that.
Yeah. But I also like nature taking its path and letting nature kind of go. That's what this is going to be today.
Yeah, I like that. That's what I like about not being like a perfectionist about it and not having
Mm-hmm.
to make isn't intent that like I'm not selling this scarf, you
Yeah.
know. Me. And it might become it might not even become a scarf. Like one of the ideas that I had about some of the crochet, like the more abstract stuff that I've been working on, is
Mm-hmm.
how can you make, you know, so I'm really inspired by abstract painting, right? Like my mom's a painter, and a lot of her stuff that I really love is, you know, these big canvases with just like splotches of color, and you know, they're really beautiful. And so I've been thinking about, okay, well, I made these like, you know, these three-dimensional crochet objects,
Yeah.
and then across my mind was, okay, well, how would I put those on a canvas? Well, what would the canvas be? So,
Yeah.
and so then what I thought of was like, oh, well, maybe I make the canvas out of crochet, and then I crochet the object onto the canvas. So then it's like, you know, so then everything is made out of yarn or crochet, and so this particular piece here that I'm working on, it I'm currently calling it a scarf,
Okay.
because that's the form that it's taking, but it might become like this really long canvas that I then attach something to, and like, you know, I don't know, we'll see what
I
it all becomes.
love that idea.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny because like if you're drawing or painting, it seems like there's opportunity for a lot of play and a lot of like super open-ended, this doesn't have to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if you're in fiber arts, maybe slightly less so. That's a quote unquote acceptable or a mainstream mindset, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, why not? Right? That I love
Well,
that idea. I love everything about that.
yeah, well, and it's funny you bring it up. Like I don't have the first time I learned about like how to make anything with fabric was my grandma, right? She taught me, you know, she taught me how to sew, and I would sew pillows, and then after the pillows it would be like, you know, other easy square
Yep,
things, because you
yep,
learn
yep.
square objects, right? And then you might graduate to like making a circle pillow, and you know, like kind of scale up that way. And I do
Mhm.
remember learning how to crochet at one point as a kid, but then I never touched it again, right? And so then fast forward,
Sure.
I'm 39, so I'm multiple years from my childhood days of crocheting and doing basic stuff with my grandma, and I start this crocheting thing again, and but of course I'm not making anything real. I'm kind of like just going at it and having fun, and you know, making weird objects and connecting things and using random colors, and sort of completely untrained. And then at one point
Mhm.
I'm like, oh wow, this is like abstract painting. Wait a second, is there such a thing as abstract crochet art? And then like it just became a thing for me, right? And turns out it is a thing, and so then of course I started like I googled the term abstract crochet art, and there are people who make these beautiful works of art. Some of them are mounted on walls, some of them are installation pieces, some of them are costumes. Like there's a lot of range around what the actual output of it is, but it's like I happened upon a whole world that I never knew existed, you know.
I love
um
that.
yeah, it's awesome. I'm like really pumped about it.
That's really
So
cool. I love
yeah.
I love that you said untrained, and I think that's so interesting that like just because you're quote unquote untrained doesn't mean that you can't make art. And it
Mm,
doesn't mean that you can't make art in a like pat on the top of a head type of way.
mm.
It doesn't I guess what I'm saying is you are entering into the art world with or permit with or without the art world's permission, I guess. And I love that.
Well, girl, I'm gonna put it like, you ain't
Get in
taking this day out of my hand.
there. I love that. That is so awesome. Let me just that's because it's the other color. Like I just bought that solder. I shouldn't have used that much. Um uh So do you think that, so I also grew up with an artist mother, and a musician for father. Do you think growing up, was your mama practicing like artist when you were growing up?
No,
Did that affect?
no. I mean, unfortunately, I think, just from what I understand of my mother's story, like, I actually
Mhm.
think she was a pressed artist growing up. Like, she wanted to be an artist, and
Right.
I think she did all make art in some ways, but I never really understood her to be an artist until I got older and realized it, right? And certainly she's over the last few years, in part because of, I think, my encouragement. Like, she's really, like, blossomed as an artist and is doing way more than she's ever done. But I think I remember she I think she said, I like she made us she shared a story at one point about how being, a single mother with three boys, like, at one point she had to choose, like, what do you do, right? What do you do with your career? What do you
Yeah.
do? um, and I remember hearing about how she wanted to really get fashion merchandising, and
Ooh, uh-huh.
and do more of the sort of the fashion, the fashion art
Yeah.
making. And but she didn't, because she had kids and she had to, like, be responsible for raising her boys. And so I think,
Mhm.
I think that was a choice that I understand that or I should say, based on my understanding, I think that's the choice that she had to make at the time. And so, unfortunately, I never really knew that she was an artist when I was a kid. Um, yeah, I mean, and yet, in spite of that, I think there was always sort of art somewhere in the family.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, it's sort of funny. You don't notice things as a kid, but as I've gotten
Yeah.
older, I'm starting to realize, oh, wait a second, like, almost everybody in my family had some craft skill set or thing that they did or could do, and some of them pursued it at greater length than others. And you know
Mhm.
and some of it I never understand as art until I got older. Like, my grandma has always been making blankets and putting patchwork together and crocheting and knitting and all this other stuff, and I just didn't realize that it was an art form until I got older.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that. Just the process of crafting. Um, I think it's such a, I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly. I mean, I have a thought tucking in the back of my head here, but the process of making things is not always just one form. So, you may not be able to be a practicing musician, but you're going to find music in your life, or you're going to find ways to
Mm.
embrace that type of in your life, or you're going to, I mean, you can take the art away from the artist, but you're never going to take, the art world and the desire out of a
Mm.
person. And if the person is creative, they're just going to find other ways to be interestingly creative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it would be what's a real shame, and I know my mother basically had to pursue being an educator as a
Mm.
way to be able to be an artist. So she was an art teacher,
Mm.
and she basically that was her way of being able to earn a living, but also be creative and in the art world. And then she was a fantastic teacher. I mean, I
Mm.
think she retired, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, but she was a beloved and amazing art teacher, and the kids were just thought she was just absolutely wonderful. She started in working, well, she did art and education actually for many, many years, but when she was teaching in the public schools, she started as a kindergarten art teacher, and then they built a intermediate school for fifth and sixth graders, and she moved up to that. And
Mm.
she definitely said, like, she wasn't tired of teaching kindergartners how to listen for the click when you put the cap on the brush, and being able to get a little deeper with the
Mm.
kids and the meaning of what they were making. Um, but she was also an amazing artist, and she does pop-up books and book art, and some of the pop-up books are kind of silly and funny. Like she's got one, When I Got a Dog. She really doesn't like dogs, and she made a book called No Dog No, and it was like 7 reasons for not owning a dog.
Oh.
And pretty funny. But then she also does some, deeper meaning, but still pop-up books or moving books. And it's very, very accomplished in that world. But I think, so that's why I feel like creating jewelry at the beginning of my career, I think maybe it was like not a sellout, but like, it wasn't what I went to school for.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think it matched me and my personality so much better than trying to make it in a world, especially at the time, that really just didn't fit me at all. So and now I'm very happy in that, because like right now I'm making a piece that's entirely out of my head, and it started with some leftover 18 karat square wire that was from a ring I made, and I rolled it down, and I was like, I think that would be, I can make something with that. And then I got to just sit down and just play and just make things. So because you rip it. So Teresa says, untrained equals out of the box thinking. You don't know what the limits are, so you can go for it. Yeah, I mean, I think art school for me felt like this box, another box that I didn't quite fit in, I guess. And the idea was that you would go to art school, and then you would get your degree, and then you would get your master's, and then you would teach. Or if you were lucky enough, you'd find a gallery and you'd make it big. That seemed to be like the path.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of schmoozing and a lot of BSing and a lot of selling yourself that,
Yeah, I know.
As my marketing mentor, not my favorite thing. So
yeah.
Yeah. But I think I'm pretty happy with where I've landed though as well.
Yeah.
And I can, as I'm looking here at this little tree branch, and I'm looking at how the gems line up and figuring out where the balance is, I know that was the same thing in my paintings. They're the same challenges. Where's the balance? We know bad design when we see it, right? It's just about, choosing balance, choosing proportion, which is also, I think, another fun reason for doing these live crafting is seeing somebody making these kinds of decisions in real time, which can take much longer than you would think.
Yeah. It's fascinating to like witness how long it takes to make something. I think we forget in our world, like the amount, like the number of hours it took me to make a scarf was mind-boggling. Because then you realize, wait a second, if it took me that long, I mean, and granted, I'm not like the world's fastest crocheter, and of course I've got, my issues with my technique, but like you just gain an appreciation for the work that goes into something,
Yeah.
So
one of the interesting things, so there's a gal who I met through some old clients, but then she also there is a cigar club in the building next to mine, and one of my old clients goes to the cigar club a couple days a week, and then and then her friend, so I met her friend, and her friend does cedar basket weaving and basket hat making out of cedar. And we were talking about cedar baskets and things like that. And you know what? Somebody had given me a plant, and it was in a Trader Joe's little basket. So it's like a plant in a basket. And I was like, you're going to be mortified by this cheapo $4.99 Trader Joe's basket that's sitting here when you do such beautiful artwork. And I had assumed that those $4.99 Trader Joe's baskets are like machine made. It's cheap. It must be machine made.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me, she said, here's the interesting thing, Mary. There are no machine made baskets in the world. Don't have machines that make baskets. All baskets in the world are handmade,
Really?
hand woven. Yeah. And that blew my mind and made me really sad all at the same time. Because who's making this basket that's selling at Trader Joe's for $4.99? So somebody got paid 10 cents to make that basket.
That's a whole
right
other
in the world of capitalism, and then it's got to get shipped. So somebody probably got 5 or 10 cents to make that thing overseas.
Well, I mean, what makes me happy is that it's an art form that hasn't been like taken over by computers. So that's good. That's good. And
yes,
that capitalism is taking advantage of people again, which
of course it is built into the design. But I was fascinated by that. And then, so that is another industry where you can have something that is beautifully handmade, like her hats that she does. And then you're juxtaposing that against the stuff you can get at Home Goods or TJ Maxx. That's also handmade, but definitely in a much more commercialized way. And it's selling for $19.99. How do we then perceive the value? And there's the same thing that goes for jewelry too.
Yeah.
Like I can't make a silver ring and compete with a ring for $10.99 that's made in Mexico.
Yeah. Which fact, Generational Thread, who's watching us, said crochet is also.
That's Teresa.
Okay.
Yep.
Teresa's that her name? Okay. Teresa says crochet is also a craft that cannot be machine made. Thank you. Yay.
Nice. I love it. See? I love that. I think that, that's awesome. Which means that, they're all going to have their own inherent awesomeness. And then it's the process of the person making it.
Yeah.
That is very cool. My brain oftentimes will go to the end. So I love that you're staying in the middle of I don't know what this is going to be. I don't need it to be, I'm not sure where I'm going with this yet, but I'm going. That is a really, that's a great spot to be in.
Yeah.
To have
I'm enjoying it. It's frustrating because I'm also very like, what can I cross off the list kind of a person. And this is one of those things where I'm doing two things that are seemingly contradictory. One, I'm focusing on one thing because per my previous comment, my creativity coach was like, you need to just pick one thing and focus on it. But also I'm not rushing to delivery, right? Which I think is the other thing that I'm used to, of like, oh my God, I got to get this done so I can get it off the list, so I can do the next thing, what I need to do, how do I get it finished? And so like just being okay with that, it's like, it's funny because here's another dance analogy. It's like, you don't get good at dance by taking a dance class. You get good at dance by going to dance class for years and sometimes doing the same thing hundreds, if not thousands of times over the years, right? It's like in the world of ballet, it's like the single stitch here is kind of like doing a tendu, right? It's like how many times do your tendu before you can just do it like intuitively, right? So I appreciate the like the focused intention of being like singly focused,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It reminds me of my roller skating, where I'm doing roller skating as a hobby, and I skate with people that are absolutely phenomenal. And I also have no desire, I have no burning need to be a phenomenal roller skater. I have no end goal with it in mind. My whole goal every time I skate is to try something new each time that I haven't done before. Even if it's try and fail or just try a new move. I just want to try a new move. So right now I'm trying to get heel manuals where I go up on both heels, and it scares me. It's scary, right? It's risky to the body because you can get hurt, but it's also challenging me. And yeah, so I mean, I guess there is that kind of like where there's some people who maybe are going to start the hobby and then look at the amazing skaters and be like, I'm going to be like them, and I'm going to get a, you know, a skating deal, or I'm going to be a, you know, be a paid skating, get endorsements or something like that, which, you know, I know people who have that. But for me, I don't mind looking dorky. I don't mind being the one at the rink looking like a dumbass, like a 52-year-old woman on skates.
Yeah, girl.
But I'm getting a lot out of it, and I really enjoy it.
That's cool.
And it's kind of like I'm just building little teeny tiny skills. And at some point, all those little teeny tiny skills are going to add up to where I can kind of do like they call it the flow. You go into a flow where you're dancing, but you're on skates, and it doesn't really look like you're struggling. You know, you're just doing something beautiful, free form on skates.
That sounds lovely.
So I guess if there is a goal, there is that goal, but I have I don't have a burning need to get there.
Yeah.
But
also the goal isn't like a destination. It's like a way of being.
Yeah.
You know? Which I really love that. It's like you just are.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it's been really neat, and it's funny because I get knocked back every once in a while with an injury or whatever. And even my partner, when I was talking this last time after I broke my elbow and I was talking about going back, you know, I was like, I was counting down to my return to skate date, and he's like, but are you? Like, do you need to do that? And it's like, well, I guess I kind of do. And now I can kind of look at it in the way of, I mean, and I look at it like, I've always looked at skating in the way that you could look at yoga. Like, there's always somewhere to go with yoga. Like, you could always get further, and then to be able to do a one-armed handstand, or I don't know what people do, but that doesn't mean that you can't. I mean, it's called practicing yoga, right? You're not doing yoga, you're practicing yoga. That's the whole point. It's practicing yoga. So you're just practicing doing a thing, and it's improving your body and your mind at the same time. I did yoga for a while, and I really enjoyed it, and I had the same kind of mindset where I just thought, each time I'm just gonna try something new that seems hard or scary, and see how it works. And but I don't need to be an instructor or get really far,
Yeah. Well, I think that also takes the joy out of the art making too.
Yeah.
You know, because like I feel like right now, and like one of the biggest issues I have in Washington State, I'll just be very specific. In Washington State, is we are like, I think, what is the number? 47th or 46th in arts funding, right?
Yeah.
Which is shocking to me. It's like, we're a big state, let's be clear. So
47th in art funding?
Yeah.
Okay, like if you pile up some states that I would think would be obviously low, I'm looking at you, weird lower south.
Yeah.
East.
You it's shocking to me. And that statistic became or entered into my life when I did some volunteer work with an organization called Arts Ed Washington, and they're basically an advocacy organization for arts education in Washington State.
Okay.
And so they're a valid source of information on this stuff. So, you know, you can
Yeah.
go to Art
Yeah.
Washington, get more details where that stat comes from. But once I found that out, I was like, what the hell is I mean, what the heck is going on with this state? Like, it makes no
Yeah.
sense. And then and yet it does, because it's like you think about how like, first of all, what we prioritize as a culture, right? And it's like math and science is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the you're not doing those things, and you're not contributing to society and like progressing us forward, and couple that with the fact that like the arts has always been undervalued and underappreciated, and it's so frustrating for me, because it's like, you know, the like, I mean, what am I trying to say? Like, I just have so much frustration around the fact that our culture doesn't actually appreciate or even fully understand the value of art making, and how it helps us to think and even be more creative and more capable in those other fields. And so it's like there's a saying, it's like, you know, I can't quite remember, but it's like, cut off your nose to spite your face or something. You know what that's
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like
Oh, yeah.
there's such a,
I know.
you know,
We could get, I mean, so my mom being in arts education for most of my life,
mm,
and then she was like on the budget committee in the school district, Bainbridge Island School District. Um, Meanwhile, every single year she saw her time with her students cut and cut and cut, to the point where she had an entire ceramics room, a kiln and everything, but she had to stop doing ceramics with the kids because she only had 40 minutes to teach her kids. And in
mm,
40 minutes, you can't get out clay supplies, do the clay, do the thing, and then put all the clay supplies back. You just can't, she couldn't get anything done. Like, she can't, and the kids aren't able to make anything in that amount of time, let alone, gosh, get in a zone. Geez, I mean, really, like, because
yeah,
there is an aspect of art of getting in the zone.
mm, yeah,
Um, and so, and then, you know, there's all this STEM focus, and I don't know if this mentioned that at all, but in schools, the STEM focus is now the big focus: science, technology. What is the
yeah.
E for?
Engine,
What's the E for? Engineering and math. And then somehow they got the A. Now it's STEAM: science, technology, engineering, art, and math,
well,
which is great, but certainly doesn't give art. It's like, okay, you can come along too, as long as you sit in the back seat or maybe the trunk. Like,
well,
well,
but yeah, hurt, and also, yeah. So yes, it's like the ugly stepchild. Let's be clear, right? It's like, oh,
right.
we have to let us, right? And so there's that issue. And then the other thing that's going on there, and this is one of the other issues that Arts Ed Washington educated me on, was we have legislation in Washington State that arts education is required. First of all, it's not comprehensive. And in fact, I think it skips certain grades. And so, like, you know, you have to have it in elementary school, you have to have it in high school, but middle school gets left out. And you're like, that's a critical time for students to be engaged in creative practice. So you're anybody that has creativity as a primary skill set, you're stunting it because you're not giving them that education. And then also, by the way, it's not enforced across the board. So there are schools that get away with, you know, arranging flowers one day and saying, okay, we taught our kids how to make art. It's like, and not to dog on flower arrangement, but like,
No, no,
seriously,
no,
that's,
no. But
yeah, but it
that's
doesn't
not
count.
art.
Exactly. And then to
Yeah.
top it off, the teachers are paying for the art supplies,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? So it's like,
Oh,
wait,
absolutely. Yeah.
so how can you require it on a state level and then make the teachers who are already underpaid and stressed out like actually pay for it? It's just ridiculous.
It is, and the fact that oh, I turned that off. And the fact that, sorry, I was like gonna go steam this, and then I realized my steamer was turned off. No big deal.
I just had a,
Um,
what am I doing? And I was like, wait, what's on here? Oh, Jesus. So you're gonna,
but um, well, and it's ironic too because, well, of course, it's not enforced because the state of Washington has been sued by the Department of Education or whatever because they're chronically underfunding and education just in general.
Mm.
And they're in what is it when you contempt? They're in contempt because and they're paying the fees. The state of Washington is paying the fees rather than paying the schools because the fees for being in contempt of not properly funding, the school districts and everything because they passed some laws that I don't know. It's more complicated than I would know about, but I have to get my mom to talk about it. But yeah, the state of education is, and then the public schools are wondering where their kids are going and why more kids are going to private education and why, which is going to give rise to charter schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But art, so I'm not being hyperbolic here by saying that if I did not have art, I probably wouldn't be here. Like
Mm.
Cecil Roy's art room from when I was a sixth grader until I graduated from high school
Mm.
saved my life. It was my safe haven. It was my place to be.
Mm.
And if really truly, if I didn't have that place to be, I didn't fit in any other classroom in any other place.
Mm.
And to be able to be creative and have a place that I could go that was safe, and I had art teachers that encouraged me to express that creativity. Because of course you don't have, and they're cutting music programs. Schools don't really have dance unless you count maybe the elementary school still do a square dance unit at some point,
Maybe.
which is actually hella fun. Awesome to be. My daughter's school did a square dance thing, and it was one of the most fun things we ever did at that school, and it was a great school. But so where are these kids that are the creative type? Where are they going?
Well,
How are they coping?
they're not. That's the thing. They're getting lost in a system and getting, stressed out because they don't have an outlet for their creativity. And it's like,
Yeah.
And their voices and their development in fact, their development from a human brain perspective is being stunted. It's like they're literally not a chance to thrive, and it's and it's state funded, oppression is what, or state funded oppression, however you want to describe it. It's short sighted. It's irresponsible. It's inhumane. And there's just so many words to use for what it is, and it's like shocking. And it's shocking that, I don't mean to throw math and science people under the but it's shocking that some really smart people haven't figured it out. You know what I'm saying? Because it's it's actually brain science that proves that art is important for your brain's development. And yet somehow art is not included in STEM. It's like, okay, who missed the memo, right? Who didn't get it, right? But I think the other problem here is let's be real. Art requires you and invites you to think outside of the box. Right?
There you go. I think your finger is on the nose.
Yeah. There are some people that do not want you thinking outside of the box. They want you to follow the rules. They want you to do what everyone else is doing. They want you to keep your mouth shut and stick to the plan. And that's the real problem,
No, I think the finger is on the nose on that
one.
one.
We called you out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and again, it's so funny. I have this absolutely phenomenal therapist, and one of the things that she's helping me with is dismantling these nasty little sneaky ways that capitalism has snuck into our lives without us even really totally kind of realizing it. so like there's times where I'll have a thought or an issue or whatever, and she's like, okay, but let's break that down. Like, who taught you to think that way? Is that true? Is that, real? Blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, wait a second, hang on a second. That's not, that's capitalism talking.
Yeah, and it's frustrating as to how like prolific and deep it actually is.
Yes.
Like you don't even. We don't even realize how influenced we've been by, generations of thinking, and it takes so much therapy and fucking commitment to like process it, and I get it. It's exhausting. Like, let's be real. Like it's exhausting sometimes to have to, like, figure yourself out, and you just want to like be and not worry about it. And it's like, but I guess, but it is an issue, but that's, go ahead.
The hustle culture right now that we're seeing is part of it. The glorification of busy, and the like busy is good, and that we are all having to hustle to some extent. I mean, I don't know many people right now that don't have a side hustle on top of their regular job. And that's not always been the case. And yet for some reason right now it feels normal. And it's not normal that our hobbies are now our jobs to some extent. Like there's this turning our, things that are supposed to be fun into side hustles and hobbies, and people are exhausted and still can't afford rent, and older generations literally don't understand what the problem is. And I'm not saying that it's as simple as a TikTok meme or whatever, but like I probably just made a whole bunch of people cringe by saying TikTok meme.
Whatever.
I kind of also love that.
I know.
I'm 52. I can be cringe.
I
at 52.
think we should make that a thing, a TikTok meme.
Now we're just
that. Let's
just call them TikTok. Oh, you and your TikTok memes.
You and your TikTok memes, but now we're old people, right?
You're not old people. Oh my God, you're a youngin.
Yeah.
I love.
I mean, go ahead. No, you go. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna tell you this stupid thing that everybody's talking about right now, that Wilford Brimley, when he filmed Cocoon, is the same age as Paul Rudd is now. So like and Wilford Brimley, when he filmed Cocoon, looked like a 70-year-old man, and Paul Rudd looks like, he's 30. So this whole age, I don't know, age is getting, it's just weird.
Yeah. Oh, I feel you.
And,
well, what I was going to say earlier was the other issue too is this, like, so the culture that has advocated for, hustle, have your side hustle, like, grind, is that the same culture that is not acknowledging the fact that nowadays you can't afford to live without having multiple jobs, and like it's like you're normalizing the bad behavior. Or you know what I'm saying? It's like, no, we should be telling people to go get another job. We should be saying, why is it so difficult to afford our cost, like to afford basic amenities with a 40-hour work week job? It shouldn't be. It should be, first, I don't think we should all be working 40 hours, but that's a whole other story. But bottom line is, if you work 40 hours and you contribute to society and you do something of value, you should be able to have a healthy life, period.
You shouldn't be on food stamps.
Yeah. And yet there are people who have two jobs and multiple incomes inside of a house, and they are struggling to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And it's not
extravagant too. It's not just a Seattle problem where it's like, oh, you're choosing to live somewhere that has high cost of living, just go move somewhere else. There are now, even the cheap states are seeing this struggle and seeing the challenge. So, but when you were saying like the why is the blame being put on us? The blame's being put on us, and this is the stuff I'm literally dismantling in my therapy right now, is this feeling like that I'm lazy. Because I'm not like making it, and basically kind of not willing to work 80 hours a week, or that my body can't let me at 52 years old work 80 hours a week to make a go of it. And then so what I'm doing is like, well, there must be something wrong with me that I can't do that. And then she's helping me go, or
it's not your problem.
Yeah. But who's benefiting? And the people who are benefiting are not going to be willing to make a change. And I think right now the people that are benefiting are, bigger corporations and the multi-billionaires. Yeah. They certainly don't want us making any changes. So the changes are, they're making us it's basically, so my friend Claire Dieter, who wrote this really cool book called Monsters. She's written many cool books, but this is her most recent one, and it talks about, initially it was talking about, oh gosh, now my brain, I love my brain. The guy with the filmmaker, Rosemary's Baby.
Oh God, that's a test I can't pass.
Yeah, well, okay, well, if anybody's watching, you just put it in the comments, but whatever his name is. But
who are watching?
He's a problematic person who raped a 14-year-old, blah, blah, blah. But everybody loves his movies. So it's separating the monster from the art, separating the art from the artist. And so her whole book is just about, like, can we separate the art from the artist? If so, how does that work? And it's in a memoir form, so there is no answer at the end of the book. I think a lot of people were hoping, but it's more just an exploration of that topic through different quote unquote monsters. So Bill Cosby, J.K. Rowling, lots of other kind of, Bill Clinton, whatever. But one of the interesting things that she's talked about before, and she talked about in her book talk, was this idea that we're supposed to be recycling and washing out our plastic bottles, and somehow massive corporations have like dodged responsibility and it's like on us to be recycling. It's not that she doesn't recycle, but it's like, hang on a freaking second. It's not the bottles.
Yeah.
Bottles are a part of it, but it's not the bottles. It's the massive corporations across the world that are dumping and continuing to manufacture, despite the fact that we don't necessarily need all of the things that are being mass manufactured. And so pinning the responsibility on the little guy or the victim, actually, at the end of the day, we're the victims, and the multi-billionaire corporate owners are the ones that are kind of just laughing all the way to the bank and at us, right?
Yep.
So I love to every once in a while just kind of like add that little thought pattern to the mix and be like, hang on a freaking second. It's like,
hold the boat.
Yeah, when the big it's pointing away to avoid taking the blame, which there's a certain political party like right now, it's like, that likes to do, they're doing the exact thing that they're blaming us for doing. Deflecting, is that what it's called? I think there's a term for it. But anyways.
Or not taking responsibility and being accountable for your actions.
Irony is a good one. Yeah, that's it. So that's been, it's been interesting. Claire's amazing, actually. She wrote a book called Poser, which was all about, it's kind of a memoir told through different yoga moves. And then her other book, which I didn't read that one, but her other book that I read that I really did like was talking about basically growing up in Seattle, the free range Gen X experience of growing up in Seattle during the 70s and 80s when the, weird sexual predators and weird sexual behaviors and stuff like that were kind of more prominent. But yeah, really talented writer. Oh my gosh, I've got all my bezels soldered in on both sides.
Okay. All right, my dear. Well,
And
I've finished
all right.
one spool of
Oh,
yarn.
let me
So,
see. Let me see.
yes, let me show you. All right. So here, let me get some better lighting too. I'm sorry that my lighting wasn't so good. All right, here we go.
Hey, Alex.
Look.
Oh wait, no, hey, Gina. So choice. Oh, I'm so excited. Gina and I are going to do this on Sunday. No, Friday. I don't know what day it is. Oh, look at you!
Yeah, and it's green and it's
It's
beautiful
like
and it's got all these.
green, deep forest green, kind of.
Yeah,
Ooh, oh, that color's
I
beautiful.
know. Yeah, I love this color. I was very happy that this color came to me and I got to play with it. And you see all the different sort of like textures,
Yeah.
and you can sort of see here. Let me show you that spot. What? Notice, does it get skinny? Yes, it does. You see that spot?
I mean, but honestly, okay.
Yeah, it's
Oh, that's
beautiful. It's
fun. I like that actually. It's kind of cool. See, are you going to conform to something that looks, even though it can't be, but kind of has a mass produced look? Or are you going to make something that is awesome and is a reflection of you? Because you're awesome.
well, I'm gonna do that, the latter.
Let's do
And let me before I let you go, I want to show you my other creations. All right,
that. Yep.
and see what else I've made, because this is the direction that I'm headed, right? So
I love that.
I have my this thing was the first thing I made. Not quite sure what it is, but it's
Ah!
what it is. It's like this sort of abstract, wrappy around, colorful thing. And then I made this one. This was the
Oh my
next
God,
one
I
I
love that.
made.
Look at those colors. That is awesome.
Yeah, and
I love,
it's hard
here's
to.
what I love about it is that my brain wants to make something. Like, I'm like, my brain wants to figure out like where you could put your hand or where you could put your arm or what you could put it on or in. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't, yeah. And so it's teasing the brain. I love the
Yeah,
color combo of that.
yeah. This could be sort of like a
I mean, heck
mask
yeah.
moment, and
Yeah, that's a, uh-huh.
and then this is my
That's
little
rad.
squid. This is my one of my favorite ones. It's sort of like it's got these little twirly moments here, and I just imagine like a squirrel wearing it, and then it would like these little squid bits here. So
That's awesome.
yay.
Ah, that's very
Yay,
cool.
crafty corner. Having fun.
Crafting. And let me see if this is cool enough for me to touch. I can hold this up, I think. Let me see. So it's funny. There we go. I have the iPad, but it's delayed. So, um, but I got
Oh,
all
wow.
my little bezel soldered in. All this funky business is it's fire scale prevention. It's boric acid mixed
Hmm.
with alcohol. And so it prevents the, gold from oxidizing because the solder won't flow if it's oxidized. So it looks kind of funky
Hmm.
right now, but I got my little, and it is going to be a pin.
Hmm.
It's been decided.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, I love that.
I like it too. And now that I have the bezels in, I can play a little bit with the texture.
Hmm.
And so at some point, hopefully soon, I will have a picture of it.
Yeah.
Yay!
And you'll put it up on your website.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I'll even
Yeah.
post about it on the Instagram and tag this video and all the things.
I love that.
All the things. All right, Matthew, this has been so fun. Thank you for doing
Mwah.
this with me.
Yeah, I had a pleasure. I look forward to maybe
Yeah, we should do this again. Oops, did I turn a thing? Did I do a thing?
No,
Nope, I'm good.
good.
Okay. Yeah, and then I look forward to seeing you on Saturday at your Saturday night, right? At your friend's blues
It's the
dealio.
Rhapsody Project's 10th year anniversary at Benaroya Hall, Seattle
Awesome.
Symphony. They're amazing. They do anti-racist work through American roots music. So it's sort of like art, music, anti-racism,
Ugh,
and just doing work. So yeah.
I'm really excited to see what this is all about. This is going to be very
Yeah.
cool. So I will see you there with a couple friends of mine in tow. So
Good.
it'll be good.
Good. All
Let
right.
the
Well,
world
have
know.
a night.
Thank
All right.
you.
All right.
You
Bye.
too.